How's everybody doing? We are really glad that you're here with us. So you may not know this, but one of the things that I do, I host an event every year for pastors and church leaders, and I usually do it in Orlando. And we have pastors from all over the country that come out. And this particular year that I did is a few years ago, but because of the conference center that we did it, there was a hotel that was attached to it, which is where we stayed. Because of the crazy schedule, I ate lunch and dinner at the same restaurant in the hotel every day for like 5 days that I was there. Also, my kids were younger at the time, and kids ate free. So when I saw that, I'm like, guys, we're eating here every meal eating here. And so on the last day that we're there, I get to the restaurant and I order what I do. You know, I ordered a Coke Zero, and so I'm going to tell you, I love Coke Zero. I believe Coke Zero is a little taste of heaven. I really do. It just tastes just like Coke, except with no calories, which is exactly what heaven's going to be like. It really is. It is. It is. It's not in the Bible, but I think it is. And I want you to imagine biting into a Twinkie Zero, right? And then having some French fries Zero, and washing it down with some milkshake Zero. Anyway, a guy can dream. Well, anyway, so the other thing is we had the same server the whole week. And then on the last day, I came in, and there was a new guy. Apparently they give these people days off. So the guy, there's a new guy, and I say to him, hey, I'll have a Coke Zero. And the guy says, I'm sorry, we don't serve Coke Zero here. And I'm like, well, that can't be right. I've been ordering Coke Zeros all week. What have I been drinking? And he says, sir, I don't know, but we don't have Coke Zero at this hotel, at the conference center. And I'm like, what have I been drinking all week? And so now the weird thing is, and I should have known better. So I have the night before, I have dinner with a friend of mine who was at the event, and so we're having dinner together, and we both order Coke Zero. And we're like, dude, this Coke Zero is the best. This is the best. It's like exactly like Coke. Little did I know, I'm drinking 93 octane the whole time. Now. And this is right, you get so frustrated because it's like, I'm trying to do the right thing. And I don't know if you ever have had that where it's like, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing and I'm getting in trouble for doing the right thing. And the reality is, whether you realize it or not, in the fallen world that we live in, sometimes doing the right thing has consequences. And the question is, will we still do the right thing? Will we honor God in the face of trials and difficulties? And that is the point of the story before us. We started the book of Daniel. This is our fourth message in the book of Daniel. And the story of the book of Daniel, it's kind of two things. So part of the book of Daniel is very prophetic in nature. If you were here last time, we talked about that a bit. And the other part of the book of Daniel is the narrative, excuse me, telling us the story of Daniel and his friends as they're taken from their home in Judah and brought to Babylon, to this new kingdom where they're going to be serving, and a new king who's there. And kind of it's them navigating life in what they see to be kind of a new normal for them, kind of carried away captive. And so, but as we've been reading, what we've found is that even in the midst of this new normal, new kingdom, new language, new everything, God is setting them up for success in the empire. And there has always seemed to be this way where Daniel and his friends have been able to do what's right, and things have always worked out. But now they come face to face with a moment where they've got two options: either compromise or face some harsh consequences. And listen, the trial that Daniel and his friends that they're experiencing is probably not the trial that you're experiencing. But like them, you're going to experience a trial in your life where you're going to have to make a decision as to whether you're going to trust God and stand strong or compromise. And so we're going to start our study in chapter 3, verse 1, where it says this: Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. We'll explain that in a minute. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, administrators, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, administrators, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar set up. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down to worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." So at that time, when the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre, in symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, what do we do when we find ourselves in the line of fire? Number one is trials create an opportunity for trust. Now, I want to explain what's going on here and give you a little bit of background. Scholars debate this a little bit, but the best estimate that we have is that these events took place, the events of chapter 3 take place around 595, 594 BC. If you were here with us last week when we studied Daniel 2, you know that Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and Daniel is able to interpret the dream, and that the dream is an image of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then iron mixed with clay. Not only does Daniel tell Nebuchadnezzar, this is the dream you had, but then he tells him, this is the interpretation of the dream, and Nebuchadnezzar freaks out, he falls down, and he says, there is no God like Daniel's God. Now, and this is a couple of years later, he decides to build a golden statue and make everyone worship it. Now, just to review, remember what God was showing Nebuchadnezzar in the dream. He tells Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Your kingdom is the head of gold, but there would be another kingdom that arises and would take over. That's the arms and chest of silver, which when we get to chapter 5, we'll see is the Medo-Persian Empire. There's another kingdom after that, which is the thighs and belly of bronze, and that is the Grecian Empire, led, of course, by Alexander. And then after that, there'd be another empire, even stronger, made of iron, these iron legs, which is the Roman Empire that would rule the earth at the time. And so, what is Nebuchadnezzar doing here when he makes an image entirely of gold? He is saying his belief that his kingdom is never going to fall. His kingdom will never fall. That's why he makes a statue that's 60 cubits. And by the way, a cubit is an ancient way of measuring because they didn't have tape measures back then. A cubit was basically from your elbow to the tip of your middle finger, which is about 18 inches. So in this case, 60 cubits is about 90 feet. And then, of course, it's 9 feet wide. So, and it's an extreme reaction of saying, my kingdom will never be taken away from me. Now, if you've ever been to the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, the Lincoln Memorial is 19 feet tall. And that's pretty big. This golden statue was 3.5 times taller than that. If you're like me and from Boston, everything gets measured according to how tall is it compared to the Green Monster at Fenway Park, which is 37 feet high. So this is about 2.5 times the size of what we would call at home the Green Monster. So anyway, now, see, I can still turn it on. If I still can do it. So now, so why does he do this? Okay, why? Let me give you a little bit of background historically as to why this is happening. The Bible doesn't give us this, just tells us what he does. Let me give you a little bit of detail as to why this is happening. If you go to the British Museum, and by the way, I need to do this too, but I would encourage you to go to the British Museum because during the time of the British Empire, they would conquer these lands and they would basically take all these artifacts and take them back to London. But now the British have like grown a conscience and they're like, you know, all that stuff we took, we should probably give it back. And they're like, hey, we're going to give it back to you guys eventually. And so they're going to give it back. And so you got to see some of this stuff because I don't know anybody that's like, hey, I want to see this. I'm going to go to Iraq and see it because that's where Babylon is. It's in ancient Babylon is in modern Iraq. No one wants to go to Iraq. Then again, London is basically turning into Iraq. So what do you do? And so anyway, shouldn't have said that, but even though it's totally true. Anyway, but So, okay, I'm a little fired up. I had 2 shots of espresso and a hard-boiled egg, so I'm like, I'm right there, all right? So, woo! Okay, so, now, in the British Museum, there's what's called these cuneiform tablets. Now, let me show you one. This is the one that it's actually translated from. This cuneiform, these are clay tablets. This is all written in Akkadian. And if you're like, I don't speak Akkadian, well, neither do I. Thankfully, there are people who do that translate this stuff for us. And this is what's called the Babylonian Chronicle. And this tells us about what's called the Babylonian Revolt. That early in the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, there was this military revolt against him, where a group of people organized a coup against Nebuchadnezzar. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was victorious. He put down the insurrection, executed officers, and reorganized the entire military after this situation. Now, you got to understand that God, through the dream, had told Nebuchadnezzar that his kingdom was going to be established and another kingdom would rise. But he's not really thinking that through. It's not that there was someone within his own ranks, because if someone had killed Nebuchadnezzar and called themselves king, this is still the Babylonian Empire. But he doesn't care, and so he is making this golden image of his way of making people swear allegiance to him. My kingdom is never going to fall, and you're going to worship this thing to swear allegiance to me. Now, you might think, hold on, wasn't this the guy who at the end of chapter 2 was saying that Daniel's God was the only true God? Yes. And you're saying now he's creating problems for God's people. Also a yes. Why? Because it's moments like these when you really see where people are in their walk with God. Nebuchadnezzar liked when God revealed the dream. But in this situation, now he's like, I'm going to establish my throne the only way I know how to do it, and I don't really care about the dream anymore. And if that causes a problem for the Jewish guys that work for me, that according to the second commandment are told that they're not supposed to make graven images or bow down and worship them, well, that's just too bad for them. He doesn't care. My friends, listen, our faith isn't revealed so much when things are going great. It's revealed when we are in a difficult situation and something is at stake. And there are moments when there's a temptation that we're going to cut corners or handle things in some ungodly way because we think it's going to produce the result that we want. And listen, as I said, the king has already told, or God has already told the king through the dream, your kingdom is going to be, your throne is going to be established. There will be another kingdom who comes, but that's after you. But once again, he doesn't care. When someone from his own ranks tried to take over, it's like, I don't believe the dream anymore. And this entire exercise is now about the fact that Nebuchadnezzar doesn't trust God to make good on what he said. And this is always the temptation for us. It's always a temptation. And you'd say, yeah, but I would never compromise if I was, in a situation like that. Really? You would never compromise? No. How do you handle when you get called for jury duty? Well, that's different. That's not the same thing. I just go there and tell them that I'm an anarchist, and they send me home. And so, well, that's one strategy. Listen, I'm not Catholic, but I've been to jury duty many times, and I think I have found where purgatory exists, and it's in downtown Fort Lauderdale at the courthouse. And because I get called for jury duty, I feel like I'm like on their speed dial because I get called so much. My wife never gets called. We've been married for almost 29 years. She got called once like 15 years ago. And when she got there, they're like, hey, there's like a judges conference, so everybody go home. She was there for all of 5 minutes. And she went home, and then she got called one other time and came home. I'm starting to wonder if she's in this country legally. I better not make that joke, because ICE is going to show up at my house. And dear government, that was a joke. She is here legally. She's not even Latin, so she was born here. And we have documentation to prove it. I hope you care about documentation. But anyway, I get picked. And every time I get picked and called for a jury, they find out that I'm a pastor, and immediately the defense attorney's like, you're out of here. Go rot in the jury pool, which it really is. And because whatever it is about the courthouse, and I've been to the one in Miami as well when I lived in Miami, but there is an obsession with this playing of Sandra Bullock movies in the jury pool. And I don't get it. Like somebody needs to invest in new DVDs. I will accept that tax increase if they're going to buy some new DVDs. And but every time I go there, and I'm going back 20 years, we will now be showing the film The Blind Side, starring Sandra Bullock. And then afterward, you're like, all right, well, they got that out of their system. What are they showing next? And it's like, we will now be showing the film Miss Congeniality, starring Sandra Bullock. And then you're like, well, what else is left? And then they're like, we will now be showing the film Miss Congeniality 2, because apparently there were unanswered questions from the first film. And by the way, if you're going to show a Sandra Bullock film, you have two options: Speed or Demolition Man, starring Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes in his prime. And so, anyway, pre-Blade. Anyway, now I'm getting into stuff now. So, anyway, so about 20 years ago, because now we're talking about it, let's just finish it. And I get called to this jury, and there's 12 of us. It's going to go down to 6 and an alternate, so they're going to send 5 of us home. And the lady that's sitting next to me, people are giving the craziest excuses as to why they can't serve. And the one lady next to me, she says, I can't serve on a jury, because they're like, it's one day, so it'll be like today and tomorrow. She's like, I can't serve as a juror. And the judge says, why? And he says, because I'm getting divorced tomorrow. And the judge says, oh, okay, do you have an appointment for that? And she's like, well, no, but I just thought tomorrow would be as good a day as any. And that's real commitment, friends. I will end my marriage if I can get out of here. And so now, but here's what I do. Like the last time I went, which was a year ago, because, there's probably a notice waiting for me in the mail. So I go about a year ago. And I get there, and at the time, I'm still working on my dissertation for my PhD, so I've got like a backpack with 1,000 things in it, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm here, but whenever I'm doing something I don't want to do, I always feel like there's going to be something that happens, that this is why I'm here. And then as I'm walking in, I see this guy, and he's like, hey, Pastor Bob, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? And the guy comes to Calvary. I'd never met him, but he knew me and been to the church. And I'm like, oh, hey. And then I go to the back and sit down. And I'm like, he's why I'm here. This guy is in crisis. I am here to help. God sent me from Miramar to the purgatory of downtown Fort Lauderdale to save this man. And so I go, and they do, now I wasn't sitting next to him, but they do, the roll call and all that, and then they explain, what does it mean? It's like, dude, we've all been here. We all know. We've all seen the movie A Few Good Men. By the way, if you're going to show movies, show A Few Good Men. That'll get us fired up. Okay, all right, I'm moving on. But anyway, so but they take roll, and I'm like, I'm here for this guy. So I move. I don't know if you've been there. You know, it seats like 5,000 people, this room. So, and I sit next to him. There's a lot of open seats. But I sit next to him, and I put my bag down, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, nothing, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm good. But you're not. And so I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, are you in crisis? And I'm like, he's like, no. I'm like, are you thinking about being in crisis? Are you struggling? Are you thinking about struggling? Are you a defendant here? And, and so that guy was so polite. And then he was like, will you excuse me for a minute? And I think the man left the country after that. The man's never been seen or heard from again. And, but I'm telling you, do you want to know why I was there? I'll tell you why I was there. And this is like, just to see if I do the right thing. Like, this is like one of these moments where God's like, hey, are you going to do the right thing, even when it's what you don't want to do? And that was God's mission for me that day. Do the right thing. Don't try to get out of it by manipulating and or whatever. No, don't grumble or complain. Just do what's right. Because sometimes we'll be like, well, I didn't really do the right thing, but it all kind of worked out. So, isn't it okay if the ends justify the means? The problem is God's work in your life doesn't just happen at the end. The end is the reward. It's the beginning and the during that shapes you into the person who can handle the blessing that comes at the end. This is why walking with God isn't smooth sailing sometimes. Sometimes there's battles to fight, and the battles, by the way, doesn't mean that you're outside of God's will. Maybe the fact that there are battles means that you're in the promised land. When the children of Israel left Egypt and spent 40 years in the desert, when they went into the land that God had given them, it wasn't like, here's the bow, here are the keys. No, there were battles to be fought. And the fact that there were battles told them that they were in the right place. That God didn't just give them peace and an eternal inheritance. Instead, they had to fight for it. Why? So they would know what it cost. And maybe that's why there's moments in life where we've got to fight for what's right, where we've got to fight for progress, where we've got to fight for peace. Because when we finally see the project, the progress, when we see the peace and we see things come to fruition and we realize that when we had to fight for it, we know how precious it is so that we don't lose it. So they've got this. This is what everybody's got to do. And now there are some people that have been looking around to see if everybody's doing what they're supposed to. Look what happens in verse 8. Therefore, at the time, certain Chaldeans, the Chaldeans were the politicians, they came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever." You can already tell these people are going to be completely insufferable. And here we go. "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, should fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship the golden image will be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Well, there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the image that you have set up." By the way, nobody likes a tattletale. All right? Snitches get stitches. That's not in the Bible, but maybe it should be because of these little punks. And it's like, oh, there's these guys. Like, dude, come on. And anyway, you know what was weird? I said snitches get stitches in the last service, and everyone clapped. I'm not asking you to clap. I'm not asking you to clap. No, I'm not. I'm not asking you to clap. I thought it was the weirdest thing. And it's like, why is that clap worthy? Like, it's like, no narcs in this service. Anyway, I thought it was very bizarre. Anyway, I'm just telling you, there's a whole group at 10:15. That's all I'm saying. These are people from a different walk of life. And so that's right. Anyway, so, okay. That egg is really just powering me through. So who knew? Who knew that's all it took? Okay, verse 13. "So then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they brought these men before the king. And the king Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, 'Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image I've set up? Now, if you're ready at this time to hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery.'" By the way, you could just say, like, when you hear the band start, but no. It's like every instrument, we don't want to leave anybody out. And, like we LARP higher, and the flute guy's like, "What? I mean, nothing." Anyway. So in symphony with all music, that you fall down and worship the image I've made. If you're ready, good. But if you don't worship, you'll be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up." And if you pause there and give me your attention, second thing I want you to note is that trials force us to choose our allegiance. Nebuchadnezzar shows his hand in these verses because he sees these three Jewish boys that won't bow down and worship the images, and he knows that these are biblical convictions. That's why he says, "You're either going to do it or I'm going to kill you, and who is the God who will deliver you from my hand?" And these boys now respond in kind, that they know that this is ultimately a spiritual test. And they're like, "Look, kill us if you want, but we're not going to worship your gods." Now, we aren't told what the image is of, and scholars are somewhat divided on the issue. Some say that it's actually a statue of Nebuchadnezzar. Others say that it's a golden version of the statue that he saw in his dream. And then there's other scholars, and I am among them, who believe that the statue was one of the Babylonian gods. The boys understand that, and that's why they say, "We aren't going to worship your gods or your image." And I want you to notice what the boys say that's really important, and there is a distinction. They don't say, "God will deliver us." They say our God is able to deliver us. And that's a really important distinction. And here's why this is important. Because just because we want God to do something and we think it's right doesn't mean that God is obligated to do it. This is one of the most important lessons of spiritual life, that God is not beholden to us and our desires. We serve him, not the other way around. And this is the challenge. The challenge is when things don't go our way, is it because things were out of control? And the thing that we wanted was really the right thing, but God just wasn't able to perform it? That's not the way it works with God. Sometimes things don't go our way, and it's not because God wasn't able to perform the thing we wanted. Sometimes it's that God simply had another plan. And you will live life very frustrated if you think that the problem is, well, there's just a problem at the helm and who's leading things, and if I were to just take matters into my own hands, things would work out. When we take matters into our own hands, it is a disaster. So a couple of years ago, my wife threw out her back, and I was cooking the entire week. And one of the things that we have in our kitchen is this chalkboard, like this menu chalkboard. And I had said to the kids, hey, I'm cooking all week. You write down whatever you want, and I'll make it. Now, that's pretty bold. And you would think, like, you've got to have a certain level of skill to be able to do that. Interestingly enough, I have no skill. And yet I'm still making bold claims. So I'm like, you guys, whatever you guys want. And so now I figured that the kids would want me to grill because grilling meat is in my wheelhouse. My grilling game is worthy of its own Instagram account because of the quality of what I'm producing. Anyway, but we've been watching this cooking show as a family. And I don't know, I just saw the British man yell at the people. And I'm just like, I think I can do that, That can't be that hard. Where's the sauce? Anyway, so I'm like, I'm going to do it. So the kids wrote they want pasta. No problem. So I boil the water. I put the pasta in. I start heating the sauce. I test the pasta, and it's good to go. I pour it out in a colander. My wife gets up, and I'm like, don't get up. She's like, it's okay. And she goes to get, I don't know what this thing is called, but it's like a spoon. But I want you to imagine a spoon like with teeth, kind of. And I don't know what the name of the scientific name. So this is like the spoon with fangs. I don't know. That's what I call it. Give me the fang spoon. We need that. And so anyway, she goes, and when she scoops up the pasta, the spaghetti, 90% of it comes up. And I don't know if you've ever seen a mop, but you know how there's part of a mop that's like firm and unmoving, and then there's another part of the mop that's like wiggly? Well, that's basically what came up. And so they're like, and she's like, what is this? And it's like part of it was like hard, and the other was moving, and then my whole family starts laughing at me. And by the way, this is why I have low self-esteem, by the way. And so I got to now fix this situation. I'm not really sure how to fix it, but I just go and I get a pair of scissors and I cut. And I'm like, problem solved. Bon appetit. And now, my son didn't want pasta. He wanted mac and cheese. But I'm like, who cares? It's basically the same thing. So and the kids were younger at the time. I've watched my wife make mac and cheese. I mean, there's really only two ingredients. There's the mac and there's the cheese. This is not hard based on what I can tell. So I get the pasta and I boil it, and then I get it out of the water, the mac, and that's short for macaroni, if whoever just got here from Cuba, FYI. And so just FYI. And so then, there's people like, I can't believe you said that. I'm Cuban. I can say whatever I want. So it's like, oh, okay. Take note. So I can't say anything about anybody, but I can say whatever I want about Cubans. That's how that works. That's how that works. Those are the rules of society. So you can talk as much smack as you want about your people, but be careful. Don't let it leak, because then you get in trouble. At least that's how it works with me. I don't know why I'm telling you all of this. Like, dude, just move on. Just move on or have another egg, but you got to do one or the other. So anyway, okay, so okay, wow. Some of these jokes are just for me. And so here's what happens. So I get the mac, and I pour in the cheese, the powder. And I have seen my wife do this so many times, and it just comes out. It's like so nice how it comes out. That's my wife laughing, because she knows the end of this horror story. And so I pour the cheese, the powder cheese in. And it does this weird molecular thing. It all starts grouping together like it was magnetic. It starts grouping together and forming into like little balls. And I don't know. And I'm like, dude, how is, and I'm like whipping it and nothing. It just keeps balling more and more. So I'm like, dude, I gotta sell this. So I say to Xander, and I'm like, dude, you're in such luck. And he's like, why? And I'm like, you know what's better than mac and cheese? And he said, what? I'm like, bonus mac and cheese. I'm like, dude, I just want you, he's like, what's bonus mac and cheese? I just want you to imagine, like, you're just eating, right? You're eating, oh, mac and cheese, that's good. And then you see these little cheese balls the size of like peanut M&Ms? You see these guys? That's like, you're going to get a bite, explosion of flavor. And anyway, he takes 2 bites, and he's like, I need to talk to a supervisor. This is not working out for me. And this is what we think is happening. When things go haywire, it's like, no. Whoever's in charge lacks the skills to make it happen. Friends, listen to me. The problem that we have, this is not the case with God. God is at work. Sometimes we just can't see what he's doing, and we have to accept that he's working even when we don't see him working. This is how we develop an unshakable faith, because if we don't, we will end up like mercenaries, where we will walk with God as long as he delivers to us whatever it is that we want. Friends, the mark of a true follower of Jesus is someone who says, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they say, but if not. Our God is able to deliver us, but if not, guess what? We're still not going to worship your gods, and we're still not going to bow down to this image that you've created. Listen, now there are moments where we say, man, I would love for God to do this, but if not, I'm still going to trust him. This is what Christian maturity looks like. And by the way, this doesn't happen just here. In Jesus' ministry, there was a point where Jesus' popularity grew to kind of its zenith, and there were like thousands of people who were showing up. Jesus was performing miracles. Jesus was feeding the crowd miraculously. And there gets to a point where Jesus feeds 5,000 people with just 5 loaves and 2 fish. And now we think like giant fish. This is like 5 dinner rolls and 2 sardines. And he just multiplies it. It's this beautiful, miraculous thing. And then he realizes something, that the crowd isn't interested so much in the teaching that he's giving. They just are there because, like, hey, can you do another one of those tricks? Hey, we'd like to see you do something we've never seen before. We're really interested in you maybe getting lunch for us because we didn't bring anything. And so Jesus gives, in John 6, he gives this very hard teaching that if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part of me. Meaning what? That if you don't absorb the teachings of Jesus and live by his words, that his words literally become the lifeblood that's keeping you alive. He's like, you're missing it altogether. And when the teaching got hard and Jesus wasn't offering the loaves and fish platter, everybody leaves. And then Jesus asks his disciples a question. You'll never forget this because it's in the Gospel of John, chapter 6, and it starts at verse 66. So John 6:66, it says this: From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. Then Jesus said to the 12, do you also want to go away? But Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And we have come to believe and know that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You know what they said? They said, but if not, we're still with you. That's the key. And there are going to be moments in your life and in mine when we are faced with situations where we're going to have to make the hardest choices we've ever made. And we've got to decide, either are we going to walk away, or are we going to say, but if not, and we're going to stick it out. And this can be in any part of your life, whether it's your career, whether it's in your parenting, whether it's in your marriage relationship. You know what, but if not? We say it a different way in marriage. We don't say, but if not. We say this: for better, for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and serve you as Christ commands, as long as we both shall live. It's a covenant of faithfulness that we make. This is why when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, he said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's this reminder that our goal is not getting our will to be done on earth. It's for God's will to be done on earth. Mature prayer isn't demanding from God everything we believe that God should do. It's making our requests known to God and trusting him to do what's best. Well, they have an ultimatum. They say they're not going to do it. And this is what happens next in verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because of the king's command was urgent, and the fiery furnace was exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. He rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" And they answered and said to the king, "True, O king." And he said, "Look," he answered, "I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." Then King Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. And the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors gathered together. And they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair on their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their house shall be turned into an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. If you pause there and give me your attention, here's the last point. We're going to make our initial descent, and that is that trials allow us to experience God. These boys get thrown into the fire, and what the king is expecting to hear are the screams of those who defied him as a public example that you don't cross him. But I want you to notice something. These boys get thrown into the fire, and the only thing that burns were the ropes that were binding them. They didn't smell like smoke. Their clothes didn't catch fire. The only thing that burned were the ropes that were binding them. And let me tell you why that, smoke gets in everything. And I do that when I go grilling. That happens. I remember the first time, the first 4th of July that my wife and I had when we were married. We were living in this little apartment, and we decided to have a barbecue at our house. And when I was growing up, my mom and my stepdad, we never had people at our house. And I figured it was just because my parents didn't have friends. And that made sense to me. Like, I know you guys, I realize. But then on the 4th of July, they would invite everyone that they knew to come to our house for this big 4th of July party. And so we got married. And I'm like, I guess 4th of July party is what you do. So I decided, hey, come over to our house for a barbecue. Someone had given us a grill that they were throwing away. So I'm like, perfect. And so, because our apartment had like this little balcony. We were on the first floor, but it was a little balcony. And so I'm like, that can't be a fire hazard to just light it, have a grill, even though you don't have a yard. And so now I had only worked with charcoal grills in the past. This was a propane grill. And so I didn't realize, but I bought charcoal anyway. And they were pre-lit charcoal. Don't worry, it was pre-lit. And but I also bought lighter fluid and like really doused it. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? This is propane. Let me turn it on. So I turn on the propane, and then I just take a match, and I just put it over the grill. Well, I didn't even have to drop it because the propane came out, and this thing like exploded up with fire. And in a matter of like 1 second, it burned all the hair on my arm completely off. And it was so scary. And I screamed, and everybody came, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And like, how come you don't have hair on one arm? And I'm like, don't ask. And they were like, what is that smell? And the smell was hair. And I don't know if you know this, but hair smells gross. And that smell was kind of baked in to my burgers and my dogs. And they were eating it. They're like, man, what is this, like a seasoning? I'm like, yeah, it's called forearm. And buy it at your local grocer, and or just gross. And so, but listen, this is the thing that's so amazing to me. They go into the fire and they start experiencing God in a way that they had never experienced before, because there's someone else in the fire with them. Once again, the translation that we have says, and the fourth looks like the Son of God. The literal translation of that, which is more likely, is the fourth looks like a son of the gods. That would have been Nebuchadnezzar's understanding. But what he recognized is that whoever is in this fire is some kind of human manifestation of the gods in heaven, that there is somebody in there that person's not really human, because he's hanging out in there with them. And who's hanging out there? The Son of God, Jesus himself. Now, this is what Bible scholars call a theophany, an appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament. And you're like, hold on, wasn't Jesus born, 2,000 years ago in a little town called Bethlehem? Isn't that what And the answer is yes. But listen, according to the Bible, Jesus is the second person of the Trinity. He is fully God and became fully man. And what we also read in the Gospel of John chapter 1 and Colossians chapter 1, what we read in Hebrews chapter 1, is that everything that is created was created by him. And there is nothing that is created that wasn't created by the Son of God. And so while Jesus became human when he was born in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, he made a few guest appearances over the course of history in the Old Testament. One of them is here. If you want to read Genesis 18, that's another one. Joshua chapter 5 is another one. Judges chapter 13, where you see someone that's called the angel of the Lord that is worshiped by whoever it is that he appears to. You're not allowed to worship angels, by the way, but when the angel of the Lord shows up, he receives worship. And so, but these boys experience God in a way, and they never would have experienced the deliverance of God had they not embraced the trial that they were going through. Now, here's what I want you to think about. The Apostle Peter, one of the 12, the one who just in John chapter 6 says, hey, where are we going to go? You're the one who has the words of eternal life. When he's writing his letter to a group of Christians in the capital city of Rome that are going through real difficulties, I wonder if he's thinking about this story in Daniel 3 when he says this in 1 Peter 4. My friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through, as if something strange were happening to you. Instead, be very glad, for these trials make you partners with Christ in his suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to all the world. Friends, maybe you're going through a fiery trial today. And here's what you need to know. You aren't alone. And you might be in the fire, but listen, Jesus is in the fire with you. And he hasn't left you. The trial that you're in doesn't mean that God has departed from your life. In fact, the fact that you're in the trial, it will show you that he's right there with you. I think about this when these boys say we're not going to worship this image that you've created. I wonder if these boys remembered 200 years before the prophet Isaiah writing these words. I wonder if they remembered this verse, which is what gave them courage. In Isaiah chapter 43, it says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. Now, I want you to think about something, and then we're going to close. But I want you to think about something for a second. If you're an astute Bible student, if not, I want you to be an astute Bible student, so I want you to think about this. Here's the question. Where's Daniel? Where is he? He wasn't mentioned one time in this story. The thing that we know, we're not sure where Daniel is, but we know this. We know that while everyone was promoted, Daniel was promoted to the highest ranks, the inner circle of where Nebuchadnezzar is. And once again, what scholars believe, nobody believes that, well, he probably just bowed down. Like, no, that's not the course of his life that we've seen. But what the reality is that Daniel was probably sent on some type of official business, and he missed this entire episode. And what a lot of us want is like, well, that's what I want whenever trouble comes. I want to be sent away on assignment. And that's great. And there are moments when that'll happen, when God will remove you from the trial. And there will be other times when God doesn't remove you from the trial, but instead, God is with you in the trial. And these are the moments where we have to stand and say, God can deliver us, but if not, this isn't going to break our faith and it's not going to break our trust. Friends, this is where unshakable faith is born, when we decide that we're going to trust God anyway. Because God's delays are not God's denials. And just because you don't see him at work doesn't mean he isn't working. There's a story that's told in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, where Jesus walks up to a fig tree that has no figs. And he curses the fig tree and says that no figs will ever grow on you again. And here's what's weird. Nothing happens. The fig tree looks exactly the same. Well, then they leave. And then he does some teaching, and then he comes back. And the fig tree is all withered and died. And here comes the question, and it's like, well, what happened there? Listen, could it be that God has made a promise in your life that hasn't come to pass yet? It doesn't mean it isn't true. It just means that we haven't given it enough time. Because God is working in your life. He does love you. And as a heavenly Father, he's for you. And friends, can I tell you this, that communion is the perfect picture of this kind of faith. Jesus taught his disciples to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In Matthew 26, when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he's about to go into his fiery trial, he says, oh, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. He prayed for a way that didn't involve the cross, but he knew the love of the Father and embraced the cross and submitted to his Father's will. And listen, whatever you're dealing with today, the fiery trial that you find yourself in, there's a fourth man in the fire with you. And you can be sure of that because of the elements that we'll be holding in our hands in just a moment. Because when Jesus went into his fiery trial, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was alone in his fiery trial. Why? So that you and I would never have to stand alone in our fiery trial. So, I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward, and they're going to hand out the communion elements, and I'm going to invite you to hang on to them, and we're going to partake of the elements together as Pastor George and the band lead us.
Something isn't adding up. This wild exchange you offer us. I gave my worst, you gave your blood. It seems hard to believe. You're telling me you chose the cross. You're telling me I'm worth that much. If that's the measure of your love, well, how else would I sing? But complete, deep, sold out, sincerely abandoned. I'm completely, freely, hands to the ceiling and ending. My one life endeavor to match your surrender, to mirror not my will but yours. I'm completely, deeply, I don't care who sees me abandoned. Oh, I surrender all.
In 1 Corinthians, Paul says, for I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you, that on the same night in which he was betrayed, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and said, take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Let's partake of the bread together. He says, in the same manner, he took the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. This do as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. Let's partake of the cup together. And Lord, we want to thank you. We thank you for your incredible love. We thank you that you are and have always been the fourth man in the fire. We've never been alone. We've never been forsaken. And so help us. Help us to trust you. Help us to do what's right even when it's difficult, that we might see a harvest of blessing as we continue to trust you. And we pray it in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. Amen. Hey, let's all stand together. So 2 things I want to tell you real quick before we go. Number 1, next Sunday is the good time change. This is the one where you get an extra hour of sleep. It's going to be amazing. This is one of my favorite Sundays of the year because you guys are early to church. You guys sing louder than ever. You laugh at stuff that aren't even jokes, but it's all right because you're totally into it. And so it's really going to be amazing. The other thing is that we're going to be in Daniel chapter 4, and we're going to see someone that it's like, this person will never come to know God. And they give a testimony of how they've come to know God. It's really incredible. And so we're going to talk about how no one is out of the reach of God's grace. And at the end of the services, of every service, we're going to give people an opportunity to come to know Jesus. So if you have a friend, family member, classmate, coworker, or neighbor that you say, man, I've been praying for them, this is the Sunday to invite them so that they have an opportunity when we close the service for them to come forward and give their life to Jesus. So until then, my friends, I love you guys. God bless you. Have a great rest of your weekend. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us today. If you made a decision to follow Jesus and begin a relationship with him, congratulations. It's the best decision you're ever going to make. Now, you may be wondering, what's my next step? Where do I go from here? Here's what I want to encourage you to do. Go ahead and click on that first link below, and we'll send you this book. It's called Begin. It's written by Pastor Bob, and it's going to help you take those first steps on your new journey of faith. So remember, to stay up to date with everything happening here at Calvary, make sure you follow @MyCalvary on Instagram and Facebook. So until next time, we love you. We're praying for you. God bless you.